Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. For those of you that don't know, this is one of the best podcasts around for Chicago sports. We cover the Bulls, Blackhawks, Bears, Cubs, and Sox. And we also throw in a little bit of the Ice Hogs. And speaking of the Ice Hogs, let's talk about our sponsors. Let's start with the Rockford Ice Hogs, located just 90 minutes from Chicago. Take your family on a Valentine's date to the BMO Harris Bank Center Saturday, February 14th, as the Ice Hogs take on the Oklahoma City Barons. The game begins at 7 p.m. The first 1,500 fans through the gates will receive a limited edition Ice Hogs poster. For tickets and more, visit icehogs.com. Also, support of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago comes from Audible. Check out Monsters, the 1985 Chicago Bears and the Wild Heart of Football, the gripping account of a once-in-a-lifetime football team in their lone championship season. Or Michael Jordan, The Life, the absolute end-all, be-all of Michael Jordan biographies and one of the greatest biographies written. Check out one of these or any number of 100,000 others. Get started with an absolutely free audiobook. That's absolutely free by going to audible.com/Swerski Sports. That's audible.com/Swerski Sports. Audible, stories that surround you. So thanks for checking out another episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is going to be a little bit of a brief one. There's not much Bears talk, not much Sox talk, not much Cubs talk. We're going to talk a little bit about the Blackhawks, a little bit about the Bulls, and then we're going to keep our coverage of the NFL draft going. I told you that we were going to do the running backs this week, and I didn't lie. We are absolutely going to do the running backs this week. And next week is going to be the cornerbacks. That's going to be much more interesting. But let's talk about the Blackhawks first. The Blackhawks were struggling on that road trip. It was a little bit frustrating. I mean, you definitely still had some nagging injuries, and you're still having some problems with defensemen, but they still were not putting up points, and that's the problem. Is this team was not putting up offense, and that's the one thing you sort of expect from the Blackhawks, is them to be able to put some pucks in the back of the net, and that hasn't been the case. And they were a little bit in danger of Winnipeg catching up and unseating them from that third spot in the Central Division. But they finally stepped up, and it was Carcillo's first game back from when he took that 6-game suspension, and it happened to be against the Jets in the first game. I think we all knew it was going to happen, is somebody from the Jets was going to have to fight Dan Carcillo. You hurt one of their players, you get suspended 6 games, you're known as a semi-dirty player, and you're coming back from your first game back after your 6-game suspension. So somebody is going to have to fight you. And it was Chris Thorburn. And Thorburn, 67 seconds into the game, challenges Carcillo, and those two went at it. I mean, to give Carcillo his credit, he didn't back down. He stood his ground, and he fought him. I don't know if he came out on top. It was a pretty even matchup, but we all knew it was coming, and Carcillo stood tall. And he didn't back down the rest of the game either. He stood his ground, and he didn't let anybody push him around. And that's part of the key that was to beating the Jets, is they need to be a little bit more physical. Crawford came back to playing well. You finally get a win against the Jets, and that's a team that you've really been struggling with. And this first time this season they beat them, and they actually had to go to Winnipeg to do it. This team it matches up really well with the Blackhawks, and hopefully it doesn't end up being that they play each other in the postseason, because this is just a tough matchup for the Blackhawks. They skate just as fast. They've got guys that can score. They're much more physical than the Blackhawks, and they're really well coached. It took a really good effort by being physical. Dan Carcillo and Patrick Kane stole the show, and he ended up being the guy that won them the game. But this is a case of the Blackhawks can't be resting on their laurels. They're not so much superior to all these other teams that they can't just sit back and coast to the postseason. You've got to actually play these games, and the Jets are a team that come out and play the Hawks hard and play the Hawks tough, and they're right nipping on the heels. I mean, if you look at the standings, as it stands right now when I'm recording this, is the Blackhawks have 68 points and Winnipeg has 64, and I mean, that could have easily been flip-flopped right there after the game. But as it stands, is the Hawks are 5-5 in their last 10, while Minnesota's coming right up there. They're 7-2-1. St. Louis is starting to pull away. They're 7-2-1, even though they lost 2 bad games in a row. And the Blackhawks, the next game after that Winnipeg game, went to St. Louis in the last game of the road trip, and it was especially a game after St. Louis just got embarrassed. I believe it was 7-2, the game before that, and the Hawks came out and it was another scrappy game. The Hawks came out on top 4-2 with a last minute goal, but still they're eking these ones out. Luckily enough, let me take that back. Is depending on how you look at it, is the Hawks have an 8-game road or a homestand coming up, starting tonight with Arizona. Is a 8-game homestand what you need? Possibly. I know Coach Q and some other people would probably tell you that 8 games at home is a little bit long. You want to break that up a little bit, use it as a break rather than a long stand like that. But I think half the teams they're going to be playing on this homestand aren't currently in spots to make the Stanley Cup playoffs. So you got to use this as you're playing against inferior talent, inferior teams, non-playoff teams. You're at home. You've got to start padding your record a little bit. I mean, look at it now. Is St. Louis is 2 wins ahead of you, 4 points. Nashville's 8 points ahead of you. You've got to start padding that lead, and part of that is beating these chump teams at home. So you've got Arizona tonight, you have Vancouver, then New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Colorado, Boston, Florida. So you've got some really tough teams, and then you got some teams that just aren't playing that well. You've got to be able to put some points up there, and you got to be able to take these wins and not let these teams get a point in the standings as well. I mean, it really doesn't matter if you give a point to Boston because they're in a different conference, but these teams in your conference, you can't let them get a point, especially a division rival. You've got to be able to put those games away in regulation, because if you're only gaining 1 point, it's going to take a long time for you to catch up to a team, or to be able to put some distance between you and a team by just putting up the 1 point. But another thing with the Blackhawks is since Trevor Van Riemsdyk got hurt, they were rotating around a lot with that last defensive pairing. They pretty much have been sticking with Michael Roosevelt, but they were putting David Rundblad in there. They had Adam Clendenning. They had Klaus Dahlbeck, Tim Erickson. They've been rotating guys around, and then they ended up sending Dahlbeck and Clendenning back down, and they ended up trading Clendenning. And I talked to Chris from Third Man In and Committed Indian. I asked him what was going on, and he said it was just a kind of a stacked defensive group down in Rockford. You're only going to have so many spots open next year, and it was going to be Clendening was going to be open to waivers if you send him back down next year. And so are you going to be willing to lose him for nothing or actually get something for him? And he's a really good scoring defenseman, and so it's sad to see him go because I really liked Clendening, and I thought he was a really talented guy and would like to see him on the roster, but there's only so much room, so much money, and only so many minutes of ice time. But Coach Q is sitting there and he's saying that they've got to play better defensively, and what's happening is they're actually only playing 5 defensemen for the most part. If you look at the ice time, look tonight, we'll look at the defensive pairings. Tonight, the first pairing is Duncan Keith, David Rundblatt. Second pairing is Hjalmarsson, Seabrook. The third is Oduya and Roosevelt. But what it's going to end up being is Keith, Seabrook, Hjalmarsson, Oduya, and then Roosevelt rotating in with somebody. And you're going to extend these minutes of Keith, Hjalmarsson, Seabrook, and Oduya, keep Roosevelt around the same minutes, and Rundblad's only going to have probably 6 or 7 minutes and end up sitting towards when the game's if the game's close at the end of the game, and they're not trusting David Rundblad, and rightfully so. He's not playing that well, but they're not trusting him, and you're ended up burning out guys like Duncan Keith. I mean, let's look at the last 2 games against Friday against the Winnipeg Jets. Duncan Keith played 28 minutes. Hjalmarsson played 25 minutes. Seabrook played 25 minutes. Oduya played 24 minutes. Roosevelt played 18 and a half minutes. And David Rundblad played less than 4 minutes. And then we look at the game Sunday. Keith played 26 minutes. Hjalmarsson played 22. Seabrook played 23. Oduya played 18. Roosevelt played 18. And then finally, Rundblad came up with 9. You can't keep doing that and burning these guys out. And I know he really was starting to trust Trevor Van Riemsdyk, but that guy is not yet close to coming back. He's just starting to skate now. He's doing some light skating, but it's probably going to be another month before that guy's ready to come back and contribute. And it's probably going to take him a little bit to get his sea legs back under him, because it's not like an upper body injury where you can keep in shape and just go out there and skate. He broke his knee. You can't go out and keep your cardio up when you have a broken knee. You pretty much are sitting there. So he's going to be out of shape. He's not going to be ready to play hockey. He's just getting back into the shape now by some light skating. It's going to be a little bit. So for the next month, are you just going to keep playing David Rundblatt for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever, and burning everybody else out? Or are you going to actually bring up somebody like Hostalbeck and let them actually play, or Tim Erickson, let him play? Let somebody actually take those minutes and use them. Give them 15 minutes. I mean, I don't know. I just don't understand. And, the offensive struggles, it's just, we all know that the Hawks go through those slumps, and it takes, you get somebody that's hot, they come out and put up some points, and then they go into a slump again. And really, it's just the Hawks need to start working those gritty goals, get guys in front of the net. I mean, they always have a guy in front of the net, but they really have to, take those shots. They're going to have to find ways to get open lanes. This is nothing new. We've talked about it before. With just me. We've talked with Chris Block. We've talked about it ad nauseum. We all know the things they have to do, and it's just they're not doing it. And sometimes when you're playing the Blackhawks, you have teams that just play much better than they normally play because they're playing in front of a packed house. Some teams just don't play in front of a packed house until the Blackhawks play them. That's one of the things about being the best road team, about best traveling team that there is. If you look at the statistics, when the Blackhawks go on the road, teams sell more tickets. It's just a fact, and they sell more tickets at a higher rate than any other team. So you're playing in front of a packed house. You want to win because they are an upper echelon team. They're a Stanley Cup caliber team. You want to see how you play against them. So you're playing at your best, and then the goalie's he's standing on their heads, playing some miraculous goaltending and stopping all kinds of ridiculous great shots. So that's what you have every night when you're the Blackhawks is everybody brings their best every night. You can't really take a night off because everybody's bringing their A game when they come to play you. It's not an excuse. It's not an excuse for the way they've been playing the last week and a half, 2 weeks. It's the fact of that when you're down players, you're switching up lines. They're not putting the best lines out there that they can. You're going on a 5-man defensive rotation, which is burning guys out, and you're having some goaltending at a little bit of a slump. It's one of these things. But if you look at it overall, the Blackhawks are right there. I mean, they're striking distance of being second in the conference. They're pretty firmly pat in the third spot right now. If the NHL playoffs were to start today, the current matchup for the Blackhawks would be the St. Louis Blues, which is a team that I feel very confident that they could go out there and beat. St. Louis is a good team. St. Louis has a better record than the Blackhawks do right now. But the Blackhawks match up really well against them. It's in the 3 games that they've played against each other, the Blackhawks are 2-1. They've got 2 more games that they'll play against each other, and then it's a good chance that they'll actually match up in the playoffs, and that bodes well for the Blackhawks. Whereas Winnipeg matches up against Anaheim, and that's not a good matchup for Winnipeg, which is good for the Blackhawks because it knocks them out. Anaheim's 3-0 against the Winnipeg Jets and knocks them out of the postseason, hopefully, so the Blackhawks don't have to play them. But, I mean, we're still a long way to go. The Hawks have almost 30 games left to play. We're barely over halfway through the season. So this is just purely talk. But that's about it for the Blackhawks. I mean, they're starting. You're looking at some guys. They're going to get some guys back healthy. You want to keep an eye on trying to get secondary shots. So getting rebounds, having guys, take some better chance shots, or at least just peppering the net and trying to create rebounds. Also, we're going to watch for any kind of free agent signings or trades because that's a potential. The Blackhawks were hoping to keep a little bit of cap room in order to be able to make a free agent move. They weren't able to do it last year, but this year Stan Bowman said he was hoping to keep a little bit of room open because at the last minute he wanted to be able to bring in somebody if he felt that's what they needed to be able to make a run at the championship. And right now, that means a defenseman, I think. If you can get a rental defenseman, that was really going to take the pressure off of some of the other guys and take David Rundblad out because he's just not doing it for you. And that's it for the Blackhawks right now. I mean, we'll have a little bit more. I keep meaning to contact Chris Block and see when he's available to come on the show, but I've got a busy schedule. He's got a busy schedule, and we're going to connect to one of these days. Moving over to the Bulls. The Bulls were just slumping hard. I mean, that was not for a team that had NBA championship aspirations. We talked with Gary ad nauseum about some of the things that were going on. He seems much less concerned than I do. And it was funny the other day after we talked about it, I get a text from him, I think it was yesterday, and he said, "See, told you, nothing to worry about." And you have the Bulls come out and win a big game that they need to win. And as it stands right now, they've got a 2-game winning streak. They're back to 5-5 in their last 10. They're still ahead of Cleveland. And if you're looking at the conference standings, they're still 4th. So they'd be playing Cleveland if the playoffs started right now. So they're still in the same spot, even after that really terrible slump. They're still in the same spot that they were as far as the standings go. They're behind Atlanta, they're behind Toronto, they're behind Washington. And that's no matter what was going to happen, or no matter what happened with their record, that's where they were going to be. Whether they did really well in that 10-game streak or they stunk like they did, is Atlanta's just running away with it. Toronto's a really good team, and maybe you competed with Washington, because Washington's another team that's slumping a little bit too. They're 4-6 in their last 10. But the interesting thing is the Bulls, I don't know what exactly it is. They're 13-11 at home and 19-9 on the road. They're such a better road team than they are home. I don't know if it has something to do with the pressure of being at home or what it is, but they've been great on the road. But part of the problem is the Bulls are having some defensive woes, and part of that is Dunleavy not being in the rotation. We talked about that with Gary. You're still missing Dunleavy. Heinrich isn't the same guy. I chat through Twitter with some of the guys with the two guys from Ball, a podcast we love. So check them out. Ball. They'll be happy I said it that way. But make sure to check them out. But anyway, I was chatting with them and they can't stand Kirk Heinrich, and really the guy is got 1 foot in retirement already, and he's hurt. He's not playing well. If you look at his statistics, they're dreadful, and they're really missing Mike Dunleavy, and they just need to get healthy again. I mean, Taj has been hurt on and off, and you have Tom Thibodeau saying that with the guys out in injuries that they need to play everybody. But the problem is it's Thibodeau. He doesn't do that. That's not what he does. He sticks with his rotation, and he plays the guys he trusts. He doesn't give everybody the minutes. I mean, do you trust a guy like Tony Snell out there? You sort of have to. You've got a deep roster. You've got a deep rotation. You've got to be able to use that. It's been the contention of Garpax and Thibodeau for years now, is don't burn guys out in the regular season. Save them for the playoffs. And Thibodeau he started the season by doing that, and now he's gotten back to his old ways of just hammering guys for long minutes. You can't do that. Butler's too valuable to be out there in playing 40 minutes a game. Gasol is 36-year-old big man. You need him on the offense for the postseason. If you want to make a serious run for the NBA title, you've got to have Paul Gasol playing well. So you got to tone down his minutes. You got Joakim Noah. He's been on and off all season with injuries and not playing well. You need him to get healthy. You need him to play well. You need him to rebound. You need him to play defense. You're not going to win if you don't have him playing well as center. Taj Gibson's not playing that well. You can't keep doing those things. So it's the Bulls. The Bulls got a really talented roster, and they've got as good a chance of anybody to make it to the Stanley Cup from the East. I mean, Atlanta's good, but they're not unstoppable. Cleveland's good, not unstoppable. Washington's good, they're not unstoppable. Toronto's good, they're not unstoppable. Like I said, if the playoffs started today, the Bulls have home court advantage in the first series against the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's actually a winnable series, and you can finally put it behind you and beat LeBron James and be able to move on. They haven't been able to do that for years. And I'm sure Cleveland's led the season series 2-0, but the Bulls are a superior team to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland may have the best player in the league, but the Bulls have a much deeper team. And I really don't have much else to say about the Bulls. We talked about them a lot last week, and it's just going to be they've still got to work a few things out. They've got to get Dunleavy healthy. That's going to be the key. You get Dunleavy healthy, you start working your right rotation back, you start playing better defense, you start rebounding better, and you're going you're going to start picking up a bunch of wins in a row. And it's not the record I thought they would have at this point, but the Bulls have a good record, and they're right in the hunt for, one of the top 4 seeds in the conference to get home court advantage in the first round. So finally, what we're going to talk about is, I think a lot of people are going to be interested in, is we're going to break down the running backs in the NBA or the NFL draft coming up. This one was a little harder than maybe the quarterbacks or the defensive tackles that we talked about, just because there's so many running backs, and there's not too many guys that you'd say, oh my God, this is a game changer. There's no Adrian Petersons in this draft, and as a whole, I would say it's a deep running back draft, but I don't think there's a lot of top end talent. I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see anybody drafted in the first round again, but we'll see. And this was a little bit of a weird one for me to go ahead and break down, because I don't see that any way, shape, or form that the Bears are going to draft a running back in this draft. They've still got Matt Forte under contract. They've got a young running back that they drafted last year, and there's so many needs on defense that I don't see much of a chance of them drafting another running back. But stranger things have happened, and we shall see. But I chose 10 running backs that I think are going to be the guys that go in the first 3 to 4 rounds. We'll see after pro days and the combine and all of that. And maybe we'll add a couple of guys here and there later on at the end of my draft breakdown coverage, closer to the NFL draft. Maybe we'll add a couple of guys here and there that I think shot up the ladder. And like I said, if there's a guy that you want to hear about, make sure you contact me and let me know, because I'll more than willing to do this. It's just when I look at the list of running backs, I kind of do a rough ranking, who's going to be in the top 3 to 4 rounds, and take those guys. I'm more than willing to pick somebody else and add them to the list. It just arbitrarily got to find a way, because I can't do all 50 guys that are entering the draft for running back position. But there's going to be one guy that I got an email about, and he was somebody I was going to do already, but somebody was asking me. I got an email from somebody, I believe in Blue Island, that they wanted to break down Jay Ajayi, the running back from Boise State. So if you're out there listening, I'm going to do him. He's going to be the 4th running back I talk about. So just give me a quick second. And in the meantime, if you want to check out the website, it's swerskisports.com. Check out the website. It's got all of our ways to contact us. So if you see a guy that I tell you I like and I think he's going to be great, and you think he's going to be terrible, or vice versa, contact me. Let me know. I'm more than willing to talk about it. If you think my opinions suck on something, that's fine too. But just go to swerskisports.com. That's SWERSKI sports.com. And all our ways of contacting the show are there. You can also check us out on Twitter at swerskisports.com, facebook.com/swerskisports, youtube.com/swerskisports, and make sure you're subscribing to us. So either subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, however you're listening to us, just make sure you subscribe so you get the show every week. We try to do it the show on Sunday or Monday, but sometimes things happen. We haven't missed a show yet in a year. We're coming up on a year. But, things do happen. This isn't my full-time gig. So if you want to make sure you get every episode, and make sure you subscribe. So let's break down the running backs. This is in no particular order. But first I'm going to talk about Melvin Gordon out of Wisconsin. 6'1", 207 pounds, pros. He is lightning fast. If there's any sort of daylight, he's going to hit that hole, and he's going to hit it hard. He can stop and start right in the hole, full speed to dead stop. He's got great college production. He's a fairly patient back, so when you're there and there's no hole, he'll wait it out until he sees something open and then break right through it. He's awesome outside the tackles. So if you're trying to break the corner and go around the defensive end, he's fantastic. Cons, I don't think he's powerful enough to run between the tackles in the NFL. He's definitely not a traditional between the tackles runner. Not the best blocker on passing plays. He's got some fumble issues. Didn't have a lot of passes thrown to him, so it's kind of an unknown. And he doesn't, for a guy as fast as he is and how quick he can stop and start, he doesn't have a lot of great moves in the open field. He just uses his speed. If it's me as the general manager, I don't know if I draft him that high. I mean, his talent-wise puts him probably his talent and his production with injuries to some other guys probably puts him at the number one spot as running back. I don't know if I draft him that high. I don't think he's versatile enough for me if I'm a general manager. I want a running back that I can put in for 3 downs. I can pass to him, I can run, he can block, and I don't see that with Melvin Gordon. Then you've got Todd Gurley. I am absolutely giddy about this guy. 6'1", 226 pounds out of Georgia. Pros, he is the whole package. He can run between the tackles. He has the speed to turn the corner. He can catch out of the backfield. He can block. He doesn't go down with arm tackles. He's got good yards after the catch. He can run kickoff returns. He's got really good field vision, uses his blockers well. The only con I can think of with this guy is he's coming off a brutal ACL injury, and that cost his draft stock. But if you're actually just looking at talent and not, the running back position is devalued and the quarterback position is extra high, if you just look at pure who the best player coming out of the draft is, and if you assume Todd Gurley's going to come out from this injury fine, Todd Gurley is the best player in this draft, in my opinion. He's my number one prospect, and he's definitely not going to get drafted that high because, like I said, the running back position is devalued in the NFL right now. People feel they can win with a 3rd, 4th round running back. So why pick a guy in the top 10? But he's just phenomenal, and I love Todd Gurley. Next, we're going to talk about Amir Abdullah from Nebraska, 5'8", 198 pounds. He's got really great moves in the open field. He's going to make somebody look absolutely stupid out there, just leaving them in the dust. He's fast when he hits the hole. He's fast when he gets to the open field. He's deceptively hard to tackle with a lot of spin moves, ducks, turns, anything to try not to get tackled. And he can be a really good pass catcher. Some of the cons, though, is against some of the top defensive run-stopping teams like Michigan State, he didn't have a very good game. I'm not sure how successful he's going to be as a primary back in the NFL. He's not big enough to take that continued pounding by running between the tackles. And he could be better as a blocker. So looking at Amir Abdullah, he did really great for Nebraska. I mean, he carried that team. But I don't see him as a featured back. He's going to have to be a complementary back. And he's going to have to pick up a lot of tools along the way, become a better blocker, become a better pass catcher. He's going to have to do these things to stick with the team. He might even have to be able to return kicks and punts too if he wants to stick around. And then coming to the guy we had a question about is Jay Ajayi, 6 foot tall, 216 pounds out of Boise State. He just looks like an NFL caliber running back. He's really powerful running between the tackles. He's got a nice spin move. He can make some moves in the open tackle for a bigger guy. Really soft hands. When you watch him catch, soft hands. He can catch out of the backfield. The issues on him, the knocks are he doesn't have home run speed. I mean, sure, he's fast enough, but he's not going to, when he hits a hole and if he breaks through, he's not going to outrun the defensive backs. He's going to get caught. He needs to be a little better blocker. He's a big guy. He should be able to block well. He's just a little bit spotty. And he needs to be able to protect the ball better. A little bit of fumble issues. He reminds me a lot of Jamal Charles. I like him better than actually Melvin Gordon and Amir Abdullah. He looks much more like an NFL running back to me. And like I said, though, is nobody carries a flame to Todd Gurley as far as I'm concerned in this running back class. But Jay Ajayi, he looks like a real deal. I think he could stick around and end up starting for somebody. And there's a guy I was a little bit unaware of. I mean, I knew who he was. I've seen him play a little bit, but not very much. I don't watch a lot of Miami games. Is Duke Johnson, 5'9", 206 pounds out of Miami. He's got good speed. He's like a little bowling ball. He can catch really well out of the backfield. He could be a better pass blocker, and I don't know if he can be able to take the pounding of being a between the tackles runner. And playing with Miami, he doesn't have a lot of powerhouse competition that he played against, but he reminds me a lot of a Ray Rice. And I think he's going to end up being a guy that has a lot of productivity coming out in this draft class. You're going to look back and be like, wow, Duke Johnson got drafted that low. He's going to be a productive guy. Then there's Tevin Coleman, 6 foot, 210 pounds out of Indiana. He's a one-cut runner. Basically means is he comes to the line, he sees one hole, he cuts into it. He's not going to do any other moves. That's the hole he's going through. He's a definitely between the tackles runner. He's powerful. You don't see him get tackled for a loss a lot. He's a solid blocker. He just doesn't have a lot of speed. He's not gonna beat anybody around the corner. He's a definite between the tackles runner. Not gonna hit a home run. He's not much of a dynamic pass catcher either. But Tevin Coleman he's gonna be a good complementary back somewhere in the league. I think he'll stick around because of that. Another guy who was interesting is T.J. Yeldon, 6'2", 221 out of Alabama. He's fast, stout, nice hands, solid blocker, a little bit tall for a running back, and he doesn't have electrifying speed. I see a little bit of Matt Forte in him. I think he's going to have a solid NFL career in front of him. He does a lot of things right without doing anything exceptionally well. He's not that guy that you look at and you just say, oh, he's phenomenal game speed or he's a phenomenal pass catcher. He just does everything really well. There's no like huge shortcomings in his game. Like I said, he's a little bit tall, but he's the same height as Matt Forte. Matt Forte's found a good career for himself, and he doesn't have electrifying speed. Then again, neither does Matt Forte. I think he's in the right system. He's going to be a really productive back. I think when you boil it all down, T.J. Yeldon, Duke Johnson, and Todd Gurley are going to be the three that come out of this draft that are just really good running backs. Then you got Mike Davis, 5'9", 223 pounds out of South Carolina. He's another little bowling ball. He's got great footwork in the hole. You watch him in there and he bounces from hole to hole until he finds that gap that he's looking for. He's got powerful on impact, decent hands, not the best blocker. He doesn't have that home run speed or that speed to make it around the corner. He's not as balanced as far as his footwork goes. He's going to go down with ankle tackles more often than I'd like to see. He'd be a decent change of speed back in this league, but I don't see him anywhere near featured back. I don't know how long he sticks around either. David Cobb, 5'9", 229 out of Minnesota. He's another short, stout, bowling ball type back. He's kind of a bruiser, though. He doesn't go down with one tackle. Not the best pass rusher, though, and he's got some fumble problems. Doesn't have that home run speed. He's not much of a receiving threat. He's kind of similar to South Carolina's Mike Davis, but I think David Cobb out of Minnesota is a better back. If either one of those guys is going to stick around, it's going to be David Cobb, just because when you watch Mike Davis, he's going to go down with a shoestring tackle, a little ankle tackle. David Cobb is going to go in there like a gangbuster and make you man tackle him. And he's only 5'9", but he's 229, and he's going to use all 229 pounds to drive right through you. And the last guy we're going to talk about is Jeremy Langford out of Michigan State, 6 foot, 211 pounds. He's a really versatile running back. They've lined him up at wide receiver in a couple of games. He's a good receiver. He can run the ball inside. He can run the ball outside. He's a decent pass blocker, decent speed, great vision, uses his blockers exceptionally well. He just doesn't have that home run speed, but not too many guys do, really. He doesn't have a lot of shake and bake in his moves, so he's not doing anything that's just like a Madden type move. And it takes him a little bit of running to get to that second gear, kind of like Matt Forte, where it looks like he's just almost like he's jogging, and then he gets a little bit and hits that next stride, and then he breaks the speed. That's what you see with Jeremy Langford. If you watch him, I mean, I'm not take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. He uses his blockers a lot like Emmitt Smith did, and I'm not saying he's like Emmitt Smith, but if you watched Emmitt Smith, what Emmitt Smith did really well was he would use his blockers. He would get behind him. He would push him where he wanted him to go to get the most yards out of there. And Jeremy Langford really does that with his blockers. He utilizes them really well. They had him running sweeps. They lined him up at wide receiver. They had him run outside, inside. He's kind of the poor man's T.J. Yeldon out of Alabama, where T.J. Yeldon did everything. Jeremy Langford's kind of like the poor man's version of that because he's another big guy, stout, decent speed, can catch well. But playing at Michigan State, he didn't get that high publicity like T.J. Yeldon did at Alabama. A team is going to get a solid running back when they draft this guy, and I feel like he's my number 4 rated running back, Jeremy Langford. And that's going to wrap it up for the draft coverage here. Not too much to talk about because I did 10 running backs. I don't think the Bears are going to draft any one of them, even though I wouldn't mind seeing any of the 4 guys I said I liked a lot, especially Todd Gurley. But next week's going to be a big one, is the cornerbacks, because that's something the Bears could potentially draft is either a replacement for Peanut, a replacement for Tim Jennings, or they use him as a complementary to going to be second-year cornerback Kyle Fuller. If you can get another top-flight first-round cornerback and you end up getting a nice pairing there with Fuller and somebody else. So we'll take a look at the cornerbacks, and I think that's going to be much more interesting to everybody else as far as Bears fans go, because that's somebody that they could realistically end up drafting and utilizing as another cornerback. So that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Thanks for checking us out, and make sure you check out our sponsors. That would be the Rockford Ice Hogs at icehogs.com, and go to audible.com/Swerski Sports and download a free audiobook. So thanks for checking us out, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van. And she looks like...
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.